Hello, my name is Gene Lass. I'm a writer and poet. When I was about 14 years old, a friend of mine encouraged me to pick up a copy of the Portable Beat Reader. What he actually said was, "Those guys are cool, man. You should pick that up." He hadn't led me wrong before, so I did, and my world changed. I already knew I wanted to be a writer, but my world consisted of Stephen King, Peter Straub, Clive Barker, and J.R.R. Tolkien. In reading the Beat Reader, my world now included Allen Ginsberg, William Burroughs, Gary Snyder, and Jack Kerouac. My young mind didn't always know what they were saying, but I liked the way they said it. As I got older, I came to appreciate the story of the Beats more. This week marks the 65th anniversary of the first public performance of Allen Ginsberg's legendary poem, Howl. When he read that, his friend and fellow poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti knew instantly that the poem would be significant and it would be challenged. So he co-founded City Lights Publishing to publish the poem, and when Howl was accused of being obscene, Ferlinghetti, as the publisher, defended it himself. In celebration of Howl and the legacy of the Beat generation, we've gathered readers from all over to read the poem. Each of our readers has been inspired by the Beats, and each has a story like mine. Like Lawrence Ferlinghetti, several of us have started our own imprints, publishing houses or labels to publish work others might not have taken a chance on. We've all chosen our own path because we're Beat poets too. And now to start things off, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce a noted actor, legendary musician and poet, co-founder of the band X, John Doe.
Thanks, Gene. Howl, for Carl Solomon. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo in the machinery of night. Through poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and high sat up smoking in the supernatural darkness of Coldwater Flats, floating across the tops of cities contemplating jazz, who bared their brains to heaven and under the L and saw Mohammedan angels staggering on tenement roofs illuminated, who passed through universities with radiant eyes hallucinating Arkansas and Blake Light tragedies among the scholars of war, who were expelled from academies for crazy and publishing obscene odes on the windows of the skull, who cowered in unshaven rooms in underwear, burning their money in wastebaskets and listening to the terror through the walls, who got busted in their pubic beards returning through Laredo with a belt of marijuana for New York, who ate fire in paint hotels or drank turpentine in Paradise Alley, death or purgatoried their torsos night after night, with dreams, with drugs, with waking nightmares, alcohol and cock and endless balls, incomparable blind streets of shuddering cloud and lightning in the mind leaping toward poles of Canada and Patterson, illuminating all the motionless world of time between. Peyote solidities of halls, backyard green tree cemetery dawns, wine drunkenness over the rooftops, storefront burrows of tea-head joyride, neon blinking traffic light, sun and moon and tree vibrations in the roaring winter dusks of Brooklyn, ash can rantings, and kind king light of mind, who chained themselves to subways for the endless ride from Battery to Holy Bronx on Benzedrine until the noise of wheels and children brought them down shuddering, mouth racked and battered, bleak of brain, all drained of brilliance in the drear light of Zoo, who sank all night in the submarine light of Bickford's, floated out and sat through the stale beer afternoon in desolate Fugazis, listening to the crack of doom on the hydrogen jukebox, who talked continuously 72 hours from park to pad to bar to Bellevue to museum to the Brooklyn Bridge, a lost battalion of Platonic conversationalists, jumping down the stoops of fire escapes, off windowsills, off Empire State, out of the moon, yakety-yakking, screaming, vomiting, whispering facts and memories and anecdotes, and eyeball kicks and shocks of hospitals and jails and wars. Whole intellects disgorged in total recall for 7 days, nights, with brilliant eyes, meat for the synagogue, cast on the pavement.
Who vanished into nowhere's end, New Jersey, leaving a trail of ambiguous picture postcards of Atlantic City Hall, suffering eastern sweats and Tangerian bone grindings and migraines of China under junk withdrawal in Newark's bleak furnished room, who wandered around and around at midnight in the railway yard, wondering where to go, and went, leaving no broken hearts, who lit cigarettes in boxcars, racketing through the snow toward Lonesome Farms and Grandfather Night, who studied Plotinus Poe St. John of the Cross, telepathy, and Bob Kabbalah because the universe instinctively vibrated at their feet in Kansas, who loaned it through the streets of Idaho seeking visionary Indian angels who were visionary Indian angels, who thought they were only mad when Baltimore gleamed in supernatural ecstasy, who jumped in limousines with Chinamen of Oklahoma on the impulse of winter midnight streetlight small town rain, who lounged hungry and lonesome through Houston seeking jazz or sex or soup, and followed the brilliant Spanish to converse about America and eternity, a hopeless task, and so took ship to Africa, who disappeared into the volcanoes of Mexico, leaving nothing behind but shadow of dungarees and the larva and ash of poetry scattered in fireplace Chicago, who appeared on the West Coast investigating the FBI in beards and shorts with big pacifist eyes, sexy in their dark skin, passing out incomprehensible leaflets, who burned cigarette holes in their arms protesting the narcotic tobacco haze of capitalism, who distributed super-communist pamphlets in Union Square, weeping and undressing while the sirens of Los Alamos wailed them down and wailed down Wall, and the Staten Island ferry also wailed, who broke down crying in white gymnasiums, naked and trembling before the machinery of other skeletons, who bit detectives in the neck and shrieked with delight in police cars for committing no crime but their own wild cooking pederasty and intoxication, who howled on their knees in the subway and were dragged off the roof, waving genitals and manuscripts, who let themselves be fucked in the ass by saintly motorcyclists and screamed with joy, who blew and were blown by those human seraphim, the sailors, caresses of Atlantic and Caribbean love, who bawled in the morning of the evenings in rose gardens and the grass of public parks and cemeteries, scattering their semen freely to whomever came who may, who hiccuped endlessly, trying to giggle but wound up with a sob behind a partition in a Turkish bath when the blonde and naked angel came to pierce them with a sword, who lost their lovejoys to three old shrews of fate, the one-eyed shrew of the heterosexual dollar, the one-eyed shrew that winks out of the womb, and the one-eyed shrew that does nothing but sit on her ass and snip intellectual golden threads of the craftsman loom, who copulated ecstatic and insatiate and fell off the bed and continued along the floor and down the hall and ended fainting on the wall of a vision of ultimate cunt and come eluding the last jism of consciousness,
who sweetened the snatches of a million girls, trembling in the sunset, and were red-eyed in the morning, but were prepared to sweeten the snatch of the sunrise, flashing buttocks under barns and naked in the lake, who went out whoring through Colorado in myriad stolen night cars, North Carolina, secret hero of these poems, coxman Adonis of Denver, joy to the memory of his innumerable lays of girls in empty lots and diner backyards, movie houses, rickety rows, on mountaintops, in caves, or with gaunt waitresses, in familiar roadside, lonely petticoat upliftings, and especially secret gas station solipsisms of John's, and Hopetown alleys too, who faded out in vast, sordid movies, were shifted in dreams, woke on a sudden Manhattan, and picked themselves up out of basements, hung over with heartless Tokay, and horrors of Third Avenue, iron dreams, and stumbled to unemployment offices, who walked all night with their shoes full of blood on the snowbank docks waiting for a door in the East River to open full of steam heat and opium, created great suicidal dramas on the apartment cliff banks of the Hudson under the wartime blue floodlight of the moon, and their heads shall be crowned with laurel in oblivion, who ate the lamb stew of the imagination, or digested the crab at the muddy bottom of the rivers of the Bowery, who wept at the romance of the streets with their pushcarts full of onions and bad music, who sat in boxes breathing in the darkness under the bridge and rose up to build harpsichords in their lofts, who coughed on the 6th floor of Harlem, crowned with flame under the tubercular sky, surrounded by orange crates of theology, who scribbled all night, rocking and rolling over lofty incantations, which in the yellow morning were stanzas of gibberish, who cooked rotten animals' lungs, heart, feet, tail, borscht, and tortillas, dreaming of the pure vegetable kingdom, who plunged themselves under meat trucks, looking for an egg,
who threw their watches off the roof to cast their ballot for eternity outside of time, and alarm clocks fell on their heads every day for the next decade, who cut their wrists 3 times successfully, unsuccessfully, gave up and were forced to open antique stores where they thought they were growing old and cried, who were burned alive in their innocent flannel suits on Madison Avenue amid blasts of leaden verse and the tanked-up clatter of the iron regiments of fashion, and the nitroglycerin shrieks of the fairies of advertising, and the mustard gas of sinister, intelligent editors, or were run down by the drunken taxicabs of absolute reality, who jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge, this actually happened, and walked away unknown and forgotten into the ghostly days of Chinatown soup alleyways and fire trucks, not even one free beer, who sang out of their windows in despair, fell out of the subway window, jumped in the filthy Passaic, leaped on Negroes, cried all over the street, danced on broken wine glasses barefoot, smashed phonograph records of nostalgic European 1930s German jazz, finished the whiskey and threw up groaning into the bloody toilet, moans in their ears and the blast of colossal steam whistles, who barreled down the highways of the past, journeying to each other's hot rod Golgotha, jail solitude watch, or Birmingham jazz incarnation, who drove cross-country 72 hours to find if I had a vision, or you had a vision, or he had a vision, to find out eternity.
Who journeyed to Denver, who died in Denver, who came back to Denver and waited in vain, who watched over Denver and brooded and loaned in Denver, and finally went away to find out the time. And now Denver is lonesome for her heroes, who fell on their knees in hopeless cathedrals praying for each other's salvation in light and breasts, until the soul illuminated its hair for a second, who crashed through their minds in jail waiting for impossible criminals with golden heads and the charm of reality in their hearts, who sang sweet blues to Alcatraz, who retired to Mexico to cultivate a habit, a Rocky Mount to tender Buddha or Tangiers, or to Boys or Southern Pacific, to the Black Locomotive or Harvard, to Narcissus, to Woodlawn, to the daisy chain or grave, who demanded sanity trials, accusing the radio of hypnotism, and were left with their insanity in their hands and a hung jury,
who threw potato salad at CCNY lecturers on Dadaism and subsequently presented themselves on the granite steps of the madhouse with shaven heads and harlequin speech of suicide, demanding instantaneous lobotomy, and who were given instead the concrete void of insulin, metrazole, electricity, hydrotherapy, psychotherapy, occupational therapy, ping pong, and amnesia, who in humorless protest overturned only one symbolic ping pong table, resting briefly in catatonia, returning years later truly bald except for a wig of blood and tears and fingers to the visible madman doom of the wards of the mad towns of the East, Pilgrim States, Rocklands, and Greystone's fetid halls, bickering with the echoes of the soul, rocking and rolling in the midnight solitude bench dolmen realms of love, dream of life a nightmare, bodies turned to stone as heavy as the moon, with mother finally and the last fantastic book flung out of the tenement window, and the last door closed at 4 a.m., and the last telephone slammed at the wall in reply, and the last furnished room emptied down to the last piece of mental furniture, a yellow paper rose twisted on a wire hanger in the closet, and even that imaginary, nothing but a hopeful little bit of hallucination.
Ah, Carl. While you are not safe, I am not safe, and now you're really in the total animal soup of time, and you therefore ran through the icy streets, obsessed with a sudden flash of the alchemy of the use of the ellipse, the catalog, the meter, and the vibrating plane, who dreamt and made incarnate gaps in time and space through images juxtaposed, and trapped the archangel of the soul between two visual images, and joined the elemental verbs, and set the noun and dash of consciousness together, jumping with sensation of Pater Omnipotens aeterna Deus, to recreate the syntax and measure of poor human prose, and stand before you speechless and intelligent and shaking with shame, rejected yet confessing out the soul to conform to the rhythm of thought in his naked and endless head. The madman bum and angel beat in time, unknown, yet putting down here what might be left to say in time come after death, and rose incarnate in the ghostly close of jazz, in the gold-horn shadow of the band that blew the suffering of America's naked mind for love into an Ila Ila Lama Lama Sabachthani saxophone cry that shivered the cities down to the last radio. With the absolute heart of the poem butchered out of their own bodies, good to eat 1,000 years.
What sphinx of cement and aluminum bashed open the skulls and ate up their brains and imagination? Moloch, solitude, filth, ugliness, ash cans and unobtainable dollars, children screaming under the stairways, boys sobbing in armies, old men weeping in the parks. Moloch, Moloch, nightmare of Moloch, Moloch the loveless, mental Moloch, Moloch the heavy judger of men, Moloch the incomprehensible prison, Moloch the crossbones, soulless jailhouse and congress of sorrows, Moloch whose buildings are judgment, Moloch the vast stone of war, Moloch the stunned governments, Moloch whose mind is pure machinery, Moloch whose blood is running money, Moloch whose fingers are 10 armies, Moloch whose breast is a cannibal dynamo, Moloch whose ear is a smoking tomb, Moloch whose eyes are 1,000 blind windows, Moloch whose skyscrapers stand in the long streets like endless Jehovah's, Moloch whose factories dream and croak in the fog, Moloch whose smokestacks and antennae crown the cities, Moloch whose love is endless oil and stone, Moloch whose soul is electricity and banks, Moloch whose poverty is the specter of genius, Moloch whose fate is a cloud of sexless hydrogen, Moloch whose name is the mind, Moloch in whom I am sit lonely, Moloch in whom I dream angels, crazy in Moloch, cocksucker in Moloch, lack love and manless in Moloch, Moloch who entered my soul early, Moloch in whom I am a consciousness without a body, Moloch who frightened me out of my natural ecstasy, Moloch whom I abandoned, wake up in Moloch, light streaming out of the sky, Moloch, Moloch, robot apartments, invisible suburbs, skeleton treasuries, blind capitals, demonic industries, spectral nations, invincible madhouses, granite cocks, monstrous bombs. They broke their backs lifting Moloch to heaven, pavements, trees, radios, tongues, lifting the city to heaven which exists and is everywhere about us. Visions, omens, hallucinations, miracles, ecstasies, gone down the American River. Dreams, adorations, illuminations, religions, the whole boatload of sensitive bullshit. Breakthroughs over the river, flips and crucifixions, gone down the flood, highs, epiphanies, despairs. 10 years, animal screams and suicides, minds, new loves. Mad generation, down on the rocks of time. Real holy laughter in the river, they saw it all, the wild eyes, the holy yells. They bade farewell, they jumped off the roof to solitude, waving, carrying flowers, down to the river, into the street.
Carl Solomon, I'm with you in Rockland where you're madder than I am. I'm with you in Rockland where you must feel very strange. I'm with you in Rockland where you imitate the shade of my mother. I'm with you in Rockland where you've murdered your 12 secretaries. I'm with you in Rockland where you laugh at this invisible humor. I'm with you in Rockland where we are great writers on the same dreadful typewriter. I'm with you in Rockland where your condition has become serious and is reported on the radio. I'm with you in Rockland where the faculties of the skull no longer admit the worms of the senses. I'm with you in Rockland where you drink the tea of the breasts of the spinsters of Utica. I'm with you in Rockland where you pun on the bodies of your nurses, the harpies of the Bronx. I'm with you in Rockland where you scream in a straitjacket that you're losing the game of the actual ping pong of the abyss. I'm with you in Rockland, where you bang on the catatonic piano. The soul is innocent and immortal. It should never die, ungodly in an armed madhouse. I'm with you in Rockland, where 50 more shots will never return your soul to its body again from its pilgrimage to a cross in the void. I'm with you in Rockland, where you accuse your doctors of insanity and plot the Hebrew socialist revolution against the fascist national Golgotha. I'm with you in Rockland, where you will split the heavens of Long Island and resurrect your living human Jesus from the superhuman tomb. I'm with you in Rockland, where there are 25,000 mad comrades all together singing the final stanza of the International. I'm with you in Rockland, where we hug and kiss the United States under our bed sheets, the United States that coughs all night and won't let us sleep. I'm with you in Rockland, where we wake up electrified out of the coma by our own souls' airplanes roaring over the roof. They've come to drop angelic bombs. The hospital illuminates itself. Imaginary walls collapse. Oh, skinny legions run outside. Oh, starry spangled shock of mercy. The eternal war is here. Oh, victory. Forget your underwear. We're free. I'm with you in Rockland. In my dreams, you walk dripping from a sea journey on the highway across America in tears to the door of my cottage and the western night.
All right, that was Howl. Some of our readers also wanted to take the opportunity to read their own material or other material written by the Beats. My first piece is from my most recent book, Delta, which comes out this week. It's called Poetry is Truth. Ferlinghetti says poets tell the truth, but epic poems are fiction, lies. What changed? Patrons in university lead to lies and leashes, while street poets and beat poets lead to sacred rebellion impossible to contain. My second piece, and final for me, is the closest thing I have myself to Howl. It's from my book, Ashes on the Sun. It's called Paper Tigers. Lighting a candle and camping out in front of the Clean, Safe Student Union for one night in October doesn't make you homeless, any more than dressing up and riding about through a city's polluted river makes you an 18th century missionary. Building a school in Africa can change the world, but casting a gold bathtub to your exact measurements doesn't make you thin. Paper tigers, you set out to be the establishment, and the establishment you become, hiding your crack-pipe sins behind shiny veneers. Can your followers' cheers drown out the voice inside? Does it even talk anymore, or do you only hear, I want? I knew a good man, now retired, who worked at a good school. He made things safe and beautiful and helped people with his hands. In a sewer on Christmas break or on the streets on a Saturday night at 2 a.m. He had a modest house in what was a good suburb. He still lives in that house, though the suburb is now recovering. He can afford to live elsewhere, but he celebrates modesty. He helps where he can. That same school now celebrates value in a full-color glossy that follows me wherever I go, like a bloodhound or the IRS. This glossy carefully positions images of Jesuits in the historic chapel between stories of world outreach and urban renewal to bring in maximum dollars from privileged alumni. The school knows history has value, image has value, and the dollar has value. Buildings have value, which is why a vacant move-in ready dorm there aren't enough students for can't be used to shelter the homeless living in 50 tents under an overpass 3 blocks away. Standards have no value, they just limit profitability. Thus abandon standards to bring in the dollars. The lesson was and is, come here, join the establishment, and never stop paying us. Tuition today, donation tomorrow. Paper tiger born in ivy, you nurse your cubs on cassette, teaching them uniformity and conformity, so even the most woke among them won't realize they've been sedated, and their actions are nothing more than useless thrashing against the sheets. John Gregory Dunn was taught, don't rock the boat, and like a true patrician, he only thought he did. Paper cubs don't make waves, even when you say you are. Pull on the cloak of conformity and nestle inside. We'll care for you. Abandon your dreams, your lovers, and novels. Write about cognitive narratology instead. You'll be safe here. The poetic canon denounced the one they secretly called the Pollock, with his rooming house madrigals and diet of cheap wine and candy bars, despite the black sparrow he saw born. And on the road was just typing on a toilet roll. Perhaps the Dusty Brooks Memorial remembers the days when the school followed its mission, but it may take Brick Pollitt to identify the waste. Thank you.
This poem is This Is Just to Say by William Carlos Williams. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox, and which you probably were saving for breakfast. Forgive me. They were delicious. So cold, so sweet, and so cold. Thank you.
I have 2 poems to read from my book, Children of the Anxious City, and I apologize in advance for how bombastic they are. Scream. In the awful heat that bakes the flesh of the ground into dry red dirt that is ate by panting wild dogs, in the awful setting sun, the street lights wink on an awful warning. Across the neighbors' yards are nothing but dust and scurrying animals. Squirrels. Why squirrels? The squirrels must be sleeping. These are larger, no hair on their feverish bodies. Small dog size, aquatic paws replaced by hands. Hands. It can't be right. They are grabbing humanoid, long squirming tails like monkeys. They are not supposed to be here. This is illegal. They scurry. They swarm. They look over. One forms words with wormy, toothless lips. Not English, not language, something older, something dead. My own mouth sticks itself in a tight ring, a letter O, a silent howl. And then this next one is called Refrain. It gets a bit louder. I keep having these obsessive thoughts. A bunch of men sitting around. Zarbamba, 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 little white island infested with sea lice. You're holding the map the wrong way. Zarbamba, 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 how many missiles do you think I have in my hand? How many fingers am I holding up behind my back? Blue card or red? Eruption of ruckus laughter and fluttering pages make a fast zzz, Zarbamba, 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 and Jesus. Three Stooges two-fingered points at his eyes, then mine, then his nail wounds, and is my schnoz French enough for you? And Zarbamba, Zarbamba, my name is Zarbamba, my name is Antonia, and I wind the wind. Zarbamba, Zarbamba, a black-clad man swings a thurible, smoking pendulum, winking eyes like a metronome and an intent cat, and Zarbamba and hate, 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 and love, 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 love. Thank you.
I have 4 short poems here. The Men at War. The men at war have seen too much. The deaths of many, cities cratered beyond hope, children playing with the parts of men. He's walked down too many roads littered with machines, had too many women in rancid sheds, lost at dice beneath lamps burning in grease. The man at war is tired, sick. He is dirty through and through. He never thinks of home. The man at war has lost his smile. It is only a theory to him now how it was before and the other time. He dares not think of her especially, of what she does or thinks. He fears she will be waiting, looking to the gate, wondering at each car that comes, if this is he, her heart pounding. He cannot stand this thought. The man at war has no thoughts. He lies in the doorway, unhungry. The wind tears his face. He knows he may never return. Like the others, he may be lost in the frozen tracks, his body never found. He waits in the cold sky, thunder, or guns, or lightning, or love. The monster. This endless, driving, blinding rain doesn't bother me. I know when all's well. There is my benefactor on the sward. You made a difference to me, I praised. He smiled, thinking on the little ironies of life. I bid goodbye, cut through the inner court of summer of the building. Everything so disoriented. The relentless rain inches deep. Lucky I left my shoes at home. In the backward ward, the malformed child lay, its head larger than its soul, its silly limbs all twisted. It lay in the corner of the madman's ward. "This could never be my child," I objected, trying reason. "For Lenny Bruce, you know, is a long time dead." The balding lunatic smiled with the wisdom of the insane. "Yes," he agreed, "but the monster lingers on." This is for Ferlinghetti, for Lawrence Ferlinghetti. It's called "Cuba is an Island in the Mind." I saw in Cuba a man who overreached his power, young, brash, surly, imprisoned in a cabin with a plexiglass wall off a carpet-covered walk in a modern shopper's mall. He still wore his pinstripe suit. While pacing, he put a face upon his fall. "Now yez take the pill," the Major Stomer spoke and pointed. The prisoner, head against the glass, crushed a secret capsule, cyanide, against a tooth and swallowed. Envoys from the state, just in case, piled inside, deftly wrapped him in a coffin suit that squirmed with inner jarring, wriggling in their hands. They took him to a nearby dock and threw him in before the cheering crowd. He sank, still kissing, into death. So did that woman achieve an early end. A man shot her from a car near the heart. No, she was alive. She whispered, "Others come, they kill." Not the fireman, I thought, watching from the corner of my eye as he came up the steps and turned. "This will ease your pain," he spoke into her ear, then drove an iron wedge into her spine, snapping the chain of life that held her. They've got my number now, I realized, and hastened past the subway fence. I'll find my way home. But home was broken by water, broken by time. The violence of the past. The violence of the past overwhelms like a wave, burning from behind the steel-cold sea. There is a lighthouse there on a wharf, and seagulls mewing. The seagulls are mewing in the air, sweeping against the sun. Childhood was like that, a blasting confusion of deep-felt things, a wailing, an immense sadness, a welter, a storm. My son and I pulled up before the wharf. "Good call," he said, and we went up the wooden steps and sat outside and drank beer, smoked cigarettes. My father did this once with me. Beyond the steel blue sea, the raging, burning sun, the red, screaming glare, the seagulls mewing in the air. Thank you.
I've just got one piece to share. This is a kind of a mashup of poems from my new book, Spit Verb in My Mouth. And it's called Self-Fertilization is a Poor Strategy for Long-Term Survival. I can't tell if I have empathy or if I've learned how to mimic feeling. I'm not sure if I have memories or if I'm using context clues. Sometimes I cry because I want to and can't. Sometimes I think God made me in a manic state. Sometimes I think when God made me, they were late for something. People believe in me like Jesus, which is to say, they don't. You follow me to the end of the flat earth and fall off. I keep going because it's round. I fall and scrape my knee, it's bleeding, it's trending blood. This is America, Ferrera, low-key, we'd all fuck Ugly Betty. I'm your beautiful daddy, the world's my deadbeat child. I'm preaching to the choir, no one is listening. They are busy singing at my face, it's aggressive. I talk by not talking. I crip walk on water. I smile, bitch. I beat life and now I'm sleepy. I bicycle past your dilapidated house. You are sad, but I am happy because I am biking. The bright ribbons on my basket make me feel so alpha. My hot tongue melts a hole in the center of my cookies and cream ice cream. I push it in and out. I pretend I'm Dalmatian sex. These are things I know. The song On Top of Spaghetti is a metaphor for losing your virginity. Feet are just weird leg hands. Quick Trip coffee makes me shit like I'm dying. Mildew angel gets its wings with extra blue cheese. If you give a man a fish, he will eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he will probably still use DoorDash. Thank you.
All right, that was Kelsey Harris. Thank you to Kelsey, and thank you to all of our readers for this event. John Doe, Tony Brown, Chelsea Moscow, Al Russell, Heidi Dippold, Barry Powell, and again, Kelsey Harris. I'd especially like to thank Clifford Meth and Kevin Koval for the support in this project. I talked to them about it first, and their enthusiasm helped me see it through. And finally, thank you to my good friend Robert Robinson and his RHR Voice Studio for putting in the time and effort to host this event. We could have done this on Zoom or any other platform, but not the way we did it today. The Beats did things that no one else had ever done, and in their honor, thanks to Robert, we just did something no one else had ever done. We hosted a reading involving 8 readers from 8 locations across the U.S. and gave each of them their own retro vintage stage to perform on and put it all together in one show. Thanks again to everyone. We did a thing during a pandemic. This is something we'll never forget. Thank you very much.
Thank you.